My name is Nat Chediak, and I have lived my life in film and music, all 68 years of it to the present day. I was born in 1950 in Havana, Cuba, from a Cuban mother and a Lebanese father. My father, along with his 8 brothers and sisters, was born in Cuba, but his parents were born in Lebanon. Since they grew up in the Depression, no one from my father's family had any appreciation for the arts. That notwithstanding, my father went on to become a copyright attorney and was involved in 2 landmark copyright cases in Cuba. One of them that as a result gave birth to the first fully Cuban record label, Panart. The second comes with an interesting anecdote. My father, who had Bacardi as one of his clients, was in an international convention in Washington, D.C. shortly after the revolution, and he heard scuttlebutt about what was happening in Cuba, and he phoned Havana and he said, listen, I hear it said that you're going to need to protect your copyright, and I suggest that you register outside Cuba to protect the bat symbol. They said, oh, Chediak, you're an alarmist. Nothing's ever going to happen. He said, well, I'm going to be here for another couple of days if you change your mind. So my father was doing his bags and was ready to go to the airport. And he gets a call from Bacardi and says, you know what, we still think you're crazy, but go ahead and register. To his dying day, my father lived to be in his 90s, okay? He kept receiving his retainer from Bacardi, which was a whopping $150, but it was a symbolic gesture. On both my mother and father's side, I come from a long line of achievers. So I was the black sheep, but simply because everybody else in the family were attorneys and doctors, And when I chose to follow my love of film, it was a decision that was viewed with a great deal of skepticism. The most skepticism being that of my father. And in fact, he did everything possible to try to dissuade me. In fact, he introduced me to filmmakers, friend of his, who would try to talk me into studying law just to cover my ass, to no avail. And so it was difficult to choose film. I got to the University of Miami in 1967. It was the height of the flower power, May Day, revolutionary days. I was lucky to be a part of, and so it was easy being an idealist. But it was not until much later in life that I had the satisfaction of my father coming to terms with my chosen avocation. And it happened, interestingly enough. His 2 brothers were also very well known in their field, which was medicine. He had a couple of physician brothers, one of whom had invented had come up with a method of detecting syphilis using 1 drop of dried blood. And in fact, during World War II, there was something known as a Chediak number to define blood type in the battlefield. The other one had a syndrome named after him that he invented. So, I mean, there were celebrities in their discipline. And so my father would be accosted in the street and said, do you have anything to do with these doctors? And he very proudly explained that they were his brother. My father was also, as a result of his distinction as a copyright attorney, he was also named honorary consul of Lebanon in Cuba. But I got a call from him long after I had created the Miami Film Festival. And it took me by surprise, because my father was not one to apologize very often, but he said, you know, I got to hand it to you. You were right all along, you know, and I'm sorry that I didn't realize this. But, and I go, how did you come to this realization? And he said, you know, people used to stop me on the streets and ask me about my brothers. And now they ask me about you. They want to know if I have anything to do with a guy from the Miami Film Festival. And of course I tell them, yeah, that's my son and all that. Long story short, in his last years, he used to attend the opening night gala. He was by then on a walker, but he would show up on opening night to what was a very hot ticket gala. I mean, black tie, Vizcaya, the works. He would show up wearing his tux and a walker, and without an invitation, without a ticket. And when he'd get to the door and he'd be stopped, he'd say, I don't need a ticket, I'm the director's father. So I would get beeped. This was before cell phones, so I would get a message on my beeper, and I'd call the front door, and they'd say, there's an old man here who claims to be your father and who has no ticket, let him in.